All right, welcome. We are on day 2 of our Chapter 4B Algebra 2 test for our practice test. We ended on number 8 yesterday, and now we are looking at number 9 and 10. The rest of this page is using the quadratic formula, so reminder, you should have that written on top from yesterday. And when I look at number 9 and 10, the only thing we're going to use here is the discriminant. And reminder, the discriminant, you were just using the square root part of the quadratic formula, and it lets us know how many answers and what type of answers they are. So inside of our discriminant, if we get a positive number, you will tell me there are 2 real answers. And if we get a 0 in there, that means we have 1 real answer. And if we get a negative number, that means we have 0 real answers because they are imaginary answers. Okay. All right, so reminder, they have to be set equal to 0. We talked about that yesterday, so I notice both of these are ready to go. And so I'm just going to plug it in. This is my A, my B, and my C. And so I'm going to have negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 3 times, positive 1 there. And when I plug that in my calculator, I'm going to have the square root of 16. Now, when we're asking you for the discriminant, it's just the number inside there. Don't give me the square root, it's just 16. And I'm looking at my guide here that we just talked about. Because it is a positive, that means I have 2 real answers. Okay. If I look at number 10 here, again, it's set equal to 0, so it's ready to go. And again, this is my A, my B, and my C. So I'm going to have negative 7 squared minus 4 times 13 times 1. And when I plug in all of that in my calculator, I am getting negative 3. So that means my discriminant is negative 3. Because it's negative, it means I have no real solutions because they are imaginary. All right, so for tomorrow, we needed to remember the discriminant is just the square root part, and we need to remember this important stuff. Okay. All right, the next thing we're going to do with the quadratic formula, I forgot to erase this, sorry, for my last time I did this. All right, so in our next section, we are going to use the quadratic formula to help us with this word problem. Okay, so this word problem is about a ball that's going up and then it's going down. H represents my height and T represents my time. Okay, now the first question though is just asking me, will this ball hit 45 feet? Okay, so when we're asking this, this is a yes or no question. Okay, and when we have that, the only thing we're going to use is the discriminant because the discriminant lets us know if an answer is happening or not. So inside our discriminant, if we get a positive number, that means it's a yes. And if it's a negative number, that means it's a no. Okay. Notice it says it will hit a height of 45. So reminder, H represents height. So I'm going to plug 45 in. And then we talked about this on our last 2 problems, and we talked about this yesterday. To be able to use anything on the quadratic formula, it has to equal 0. So the first thing I have to do is subtract that 45. Okay, and when I do that, I'm going to have negative 39. And now we're ready to go. I'm going to plug this in here. And so now I have 70 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times negative 39. And again, we're just plugging in what's in the discriminant there. So we're just plugging that part into our calculator. And when I do that, I'm getting positive 2,404. So since it's positive, our answer is yes, because our discriminant is positive. Okay? If it was negative, obviously you would tell me no. All right, our next one says, when will it? So that means I'm trying to find a time. And when will it hit 10 feet? And I have to round my answers to the nearest hundredth. Okay. Also make sure you label your answers. So again, I'm going to plug 10 in for my height. And just like our last problems, I have to make sure it equals 0. So I'm going to minus that 10 there. Okay, so we're going to minus that 10. And when we do that, now that I want to know my time, sorry, I went too far, we're just going to use the quadratic formula now. So I'm going to say t equals -70 plus or minus, I've got 70 squared minus 4 times -16 times -4 all over 2 times -16. So reminder, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our calculators and we're just going to find out what's inside this square root. If you want to pause so you can do your calculator, feel free. I'm just going to keep going, so pause if you need to. So when I plug in all of that stuff into my calculator, I'm getting 4,644. Okay, and then reminder, we're about to have two answers because of that plus and that minus. We know that because the ball is going to go up and it's going to go down, and so it's going to hit 10 feet twice at the beginning and at the end of the ball going up and down. Oop. So then this next one's going to have a minus. Now for this next part, when we're plugging this in our calculator, reminder, you're going to plug in this top part, so the -70 plus 4,000, or the square root of 4,644. You're going to hit enter, and then you're going to divide by -32. Okay, so when I plug in this top one and divide it by -32, this top one, I'm going to get 0.06, and we need to label it with seconds because we're talking about time. So it hits that 10 feet right away. And then when it's coming back down, it takes 4.32 seconds. And again, practice this on your calculator, pause the video. And so for this one, we have two answers because the ball is going up and the ball is going down. Now, obviously, if one of these answers was negative, that would not be our answer. Okay. All right, for our last page here, this should hopefully be our easiest page. Okay, so this whole page, it just used the quadratic formula. Our last page is our page about our eyes. Now, it's super important you notice each problem has something different between the parentheses, and each problem is asking you to do something different, so make sure you take note of that. This first one should be our easiest problem. The square root of 64 is 8, but because it's -64, I'm going to have 8i. Okay, you can put a plus minus in front. You don't need to because we're not solving, so I don't require that. Okay. This next one, number 13, I'm going to distribute this negative here. So now I have 4 plus I minus 5 minus 3i. And now reminder, all that we need to do is combine like terms. So I'm going to combine this 4 and this -5, which gives me -1. I'm going to combine my i's, and now I have -2i. And that's my answer. And reminder, this whole page we can check on our calculator. I'm going to bring up my calculator real quick. Reminder, on our calculator, to get the I, we hit second and decimal, and that I pops up. So reminder, you can check all of these problems on your calculator. Now, if you don't have work, I can't give you credit, okay? But your calculator can check every single problem for you. Okay. All right, so now if I look at this next one, this next one's just telling us to add them, so I don't have to distribute it all because it's just a plus. And again, we're just going to combine like terms. I have this -2 and this 6, so that's going to become 4. I have this 11i and -7i, so it's going to become 4i. Okay, and again, we could check that on our calculator. This next one, I have nothing in between here, so that tells me I'm FOILing. Okay, so first I'm going to have 3 times 7, which is 21. I have 3 times I, so I have 3i. I I have negative 2i times 7, so I have negative 14i. And I have negative 2i times I, so I have negative 2i squared. Now reminder, I squared, we talked about this before break, it's the same as negative 1. So it's really changing this 2 into a positive 2. And now from here, we're going to combine like terms. I have 2 and 21, which is 23. I have 3i minus 14i, which is going to give me negative 11i. And again, we can check this on our calculator. Okay. Our last problem is probably our trickiest problem on this page. So if you remember, we cannot have an I on the bottom. So to get rid of it, we multiply by the conjugate. So the conjugate is we look at the bottom here and it's the opposite sign. So instead of 2 plus 5i, I'm going to multiply by 2 minus 5i. And if I do that to the bottom, it means I have to do it to the top. Oops. It means I have to do it to the top. Okay. Now, here's where I'm going to allow you to use your calculator. So if you want, you can grab your calculator and plug that in. So plug in the whole top here. So 4 times 2 minus 5i, make sure you use parentheses. And when we do that, we're going to get 8 minus 20i. And then we're going to plug in the whole bottom here. So put parentheses around your 2 plus 5i and multiply it to, in parentheses, 2 minus 5i. Okay, you need to plug it in exactly as you see it, otherwise your calculator is going to do it wrong. And when we plug that in, we're going to get 29. Pause the video so you're able to plug that in and make sure you get 29. Okay, our last step is to see, can I divide anything out of these 3 numbers? I cannot do that, so we are done. All right, please make sure you study for this test. It has some trickster stuff. Make sure you notice the video from yesterday, and good luck. All right, thank you.